Welcome to the Fusion Power Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Gillespie. Today, we're going to be talking about lead generation out in the hood. And, being a door-to-door veteran for now over 20 years, my first summer was 2003, knocking doors in Denver, Colorado, selling satellite systems. I've seen a lot of doors and I've talked to thousands and thousands of customers. I love the door-to-door world. I think it is such an incredible thing. I want my kids to do door-to-door. I think that everybody should do it for a little bit just because of the things that you learn being a door-to-door salesman, the grit, the mentality, the way to approach your people, the way to be able to handle yourself, learning how to ask questions, listen, engage. All these skills are just so amazing. And so for somebody that can have success in the door-to-door world, I feel like there's nothing that you can't do. So today on the program, I got Max Crouch with us. He is one of our best lead generators. Max has been with us on and off for about a year now, maybe even a little bit more. So welcome to the podcast, Max. Appreciate you being here, buddy.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this, because you've been one of our best lead generators, and there's a bunch of different ways that you can generate leads. And you've done phone sales, you've done now door to door. You've been in this. What would you say, like having done door to door now for several months? What would you say like the advantage of door knocking is over other kind of lead gen?
The advantage is, especially if you can have a great appearance on the door, you take care of yourself well. That doesn't really translate over the phones. So number one is obviously if you look good and you feel good, it's gonna translate to that customer, picking up on that energy. And I mean, they're home, so they have no excuse but to answer the door. So you're just gonna get a lot more opportunities.
Well, and the thing that I love about it is like in a retail sale, you're waiting for people to come to you, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with door to door, you're going to them. And so you never run out of clients. You're not sitting there like maybe you're a car salesman waiting for the next person to come on the car lot, and then 5 other people are all trying to get the guy out at the same time. When it's door to door, it's you and your hood, and it's like, I have 400 people in this neighborhood that I can talk to as long as I just move from house to house to house. And so I always have an opportunity to sell somebody. And then I'm doing it at their house. I'm like you said, we've got this face-to-face interaction. It's a lot harder. I mean, some people do shut the door on our faces, right? Yeah. But it's a lot harder to shut the door on somebody's face than it is just to not interested in hang up the phone, or some other kind of lead generation.
Yeah, just to you kind of control your own destiny when you knock doors. It's like one of the one things that you can't control is how many people you're going to go to their house. You're going to tell them what's going on. You're going to try to provide value and help their situation. So as long as you believe that.
So you're in a neighborhood, okay? You're getting ready to start knocking doors. What are you thinking about as you approach a new door to knock? Actually, let me ask you this before that. How do you decide which house to knock first?
Back when I first started, in solar, knocking doors, I definitely like to talk to the people that already had the service. So I mean, unless it's like early in the day and you get there and you're like, see this really nice house with a Tesla out front and you're like, oh, wow, these people really like renewable. They're already sold on the idea of an electric car. Why not talk to them first about some solar? So I'm not very choosy. If it's early in the day, I just like to talk to live people. So I definitely just want to make sure I'm going
during those afternoon hours where everybody's gone. It's like, I just need a live body. I just need somebody to pitch. But, obviously we always train people. It's like, you want to start, like you were mentioning, I want to start with a solar home, somebody that's already got the product, find out how long have they had it. Do they like it? Do they not like it? What's been good? What's been bad? Because now I can use that for all the neighbors around me, right? And if I'm like, I just talked to Max, and now next door I can say, hey, have you talked to Max about a solar system? He just told me he's saving $200 a month.
Yep.
His bill this year compared to last year was $200 a month cheaper. Like, that gives me a lot of ammo and credibility going to that person. And so starting with those people is always positive. When you go to a door and you're looking at a house, what are the things that you're looking for to try and profile that customer, to try and determine, like, who is this person that I'm going to be talking to?
Yeah, I just want to touch back on about that last question before we move into that, because it really reminded me of an interaction that I had this summer in a brand new market in Tucson. Had never knocked there before, and I decided to knock the first house in the neighborhood that had solar, and I found out that he was a part of their TEP's program where they put panels on his house. Mm-hmm. They gave him a lower rate, I walked right next door to his next door neighbor, told him that little story. Next couple days later, that guy's getting a 13 kilowatt system because he went over and talked to that neighbor about it, and he ended up doing a PPA, and it was great. So I would have never got that sale if I didn't just find out about why his neighbor decided to do it.
There's a power in using people's names and using people credibility, right? That location, that proximity is a huge part of door knocking.
Yeah.
For
and
sure.
so your next question was, what do I look for when I am approaching a house?
Right.
Like, I'm always looking whether they have a nice, like, well-kept yard. Always checking out what kind of cars they have. People like to talk about what they have. You know, they love what they bought. They love their home, their cars. If there's any sports teams, they have, you know, posted in the lawn. So I'll just compliment them as best I can. I don't try to seem too salesy with it, so it's got to be genuine. Something that I actually appreciate about their home. And then it just seems really natural. And they're like, this guy's a real person. He's not just up here saying his pitch.
I think when you look at a house ahead of time too, and you kind of understand who the person is that you're talking to, one, you're going to know how to approach them a little bit better, right? If I pay attention, I see, like you mentioned, I have a really, really nice yard. Okay, this guy takes pride in his house, right? If he's got like perfectly edged lawn and stuff like that, he's probably a meticulous person. This guy's going to be probably going to be a numbers guy. This guy's going to want to be very, very specific. He's not going to want to fluff. He's going to want to know exactly what this looks like. Where if I go to another house that's kind of overgrown and there's toys on the lawn, this is a busy young family that doesn't have a lot of time and they're spending money just trying to stay alive, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be somebody that are probably going to appreciate savings and so I'm going to go more with that kind of a pitch, right? There's just these little things. But if I'm walking door to door and I'm just playing on Instagram, you know, scrolling in between doors, if I'm not paying attention to that kind of stuff, I'm missing it. If the first time that I see that person or know who that person is right when they open the door, I have to immediately make these snap judgments, and I might miss something that I could have used up, you know, walking up to that house.
It reminds me of just like the analogy of being proactive rather than being reactive. Because when you knock on someone's door, they're automatically in a sense of reaction. They reacted to the door knocking, right? Oh, and then they come out and they're like, you're saying stuff to them, and they're just reacting, and that's why they're like, not interested, dude. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? What's up? You ask them how you doing today, and they're like, good, and they don't even ask you how you're doing. It's because they're not in like a natural state.
Yeah.
So if you're not like putting yourself in a state of investigating at all times, checking what way the roofs are, if they have south or west facing before you even approach the house, checking out their, you know, all that stuff, you're doing yourself a disservice.
You're missing stuff. And that kind of leads into the next question then is like, once I do get somebody to open up that door, the first thing they're thinking is, great, salesman, how do I get rid of this guy, right? Yeah. What do you do to try and break someone's preoccupation and have them actually give you, buy 20 seconds of their time to start being able to pitch them?
Most of the time, I'll open with just letting them know that I'm stopping by real quick about a specific thing, whether it's a notice that their utility company, something they're familiar with, a notice that their utility company raised the rates again. I'll always lead with something like, you know, we've been helping the families out. You probably know John and Sherry.
Good. Name dropping is huge,
they've got that
right?
Escalade out front. So we were just over there. Not here to pressure you to buy anything right now. We're just trying to find which homes were impacted the most by these rate increases and see if you qualify for some of the new programs out right now.
Awesome, right? And so now you've piqued their interest. It's like, all right, what are you getting at here, right? And it's fun because door to door, it's this little chess match. If you make a move and then you see what they're going to do in return, you're kind of going back and forth playing this game. But it's like, I just need to buy 10 extra seconds. I just need to buy 20 extra seconds. And once I've got them to give me that, now I got a chance to actually start explaining and asking more questions. Let me ask you this, because people are defensive, right, on the doors. Nobody likes to have a salesman knock on the door. What do you do with your body posture, your tone? What does your body language try to communicate? And why do you think that's so important?
I think it's really important to, within the first couple seconds, to not come off as someone that's threatening first. So you always want to position yourself stepping back from the door as far as possible. And then I'll be busy looking at my phone to give them a moment to survey what's going on and kind of see me without just like locking eyes on them and like, you know, expect, because then they're just like kind of freaked out by that.
You're just already staring at them before they even open up the
exactly.
door.
Hi.
Yeah.
It's super weird when people do that. And that's one of the things, like when someone's shadowing me to see how the job's done, it's like what they always want to do first. It's like they don't know what they're doing, but they want to say hi like instantly right when the person opens the door. And that's like you said, you're playing a card game, right? And if you throw your card out there first, then they automatically can throw out a card that just absolutely tanks your whole hand. And so if you wait for them to throw their card out first and then you respond with, "Oh, hi," you know, I'll be super quick, stopping by about this. Probably know your neighbor. We're working with them. And then they're like, "Oh, okay."
Tell me about what do you want to think about your voice when you talk to somebody? Tell me about volume and tone and inflections and stuff like that. What do you kind of try to focus on?
So I've been doing it long enough to where I know what I'm going to say, so there's no thinking involved. It's just I talk to people on the door almost always the same, unless it's like an old lady, or if someone comes out being loud, I'll kind of match their pitch just naturally and get loud. But honestly, if every salesperson listening to this took their pace of their pitch back about at least 10%, it would serve to be a good purpose, because that's what I do is I go real slow.
And that tone and that pace, it should be how we're talking right now, right?
Yeah.
It should just be very conversational. I always tell reps, it's like, talk to them the same way that you'd be talking to one of your own neighbors or one of your own buddies. Like, you would never approach one of your neighbors and be like, "Hey, how are you today, sir?"
Yeah.
Like, would you be, "Hi, Max, how are you today?"
Yeah.
Like, you'd be like, "What are you doing, man?" Like, that just it's not natural, right? It's like, "Max, what's up? How are you, man? Did somebody tell you I'd be stopping by?"
Yeah.
Right? It's much more just like simple and easy and relaxed and normal. I just tell people, just be as normal as you can, because people sense if it feels fabricated. And
the hard part about being as normal as you can when you don't know what you're going to say is absolutely impossible.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So talk more about that, because that is a big part of it. Like, you know, I have this reoccurring dream where I'm on stage and I'm supposed to be acting in this role, and I've never even practiced. I don't even know what my parts are.
Yeah.
And everybody turns to me and it's supposed to be my line, and I'm like, I don't know. I need to have somebody analyze this, because I've had this dream like 10 times in the last 3 years. It's weird.
Oh, wow.
But it's that feeling of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next, and it's just pure anxiety, right? So a rep has to have some preparation. They have to have their lines, right? They have to know where they're going to go if it's going to work.
So most of the time people over or underestimate the amount of drilling and rehearsing and practicing and memorizing that they have to do with these pitches and these rebuttals. But once you've done it enough, you realize that there's only a few different things that a customer can say to try to get you out of there, or try to put off making a decision to check stuff out. So if you practice and rehearse with someone that's done it before, like at least a third of the amount of time that you're going to go put into the doors beforehand, like especially when you're learning, that's going to make all the difference, right? Writing out your pitch, memorizing it, because it's just like practicing in a game. Playing in the NFL, they do weeks and weeks of training camp before they ever go on stage to play the game.
Right.
And then when they do, it's like there's no thinking involved. They're just
All
executing.
reactionary,
Yeah,
right?
they're just executing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've knocked the door, we've broken their preoccupation. The next step's the most important thing, right? We got to give them a why they want to listen to us. So let's talk about creating that problem for the customer. Tell me why. How do we create a problem, and why is that the most important thing that we need to be focused on?
Yeah. Without a problem, without them feeling some need to possibly shake up how they're doing what they're doing right now, there's no need for a human being to want to change anything unless their problem outweighs the effort of what that change might look like.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you sell the problem, your product naturally fills that void for them, right?
Yeah. If you can highlight these problems that they push off every single day, and they, like, you know, they say like the electric bill is like a rock in your shoe. It's like annoying. You keep walking though, but you know it's there. And unless someone just like tells you about it, or that rock gets too big or too sharp, you're probably not going to do anything.
Right.
So if you let them know, like, hey, we just want to take that rock, make sure it doesn't turn into a glass shard that punctures your foot, in 2-3 years down the line,
Right.
we just don't want to we want to make sure that you're in a financially stable position always.
And the great thing about solar, when we're selling an alternative energy source, like there's so many different problems that you can create, right? You can talk about high bills, you can talk about rising costs, you can talk about the grid overload and the utility having to do blackouts, especially if you're in California, right? You can talk about, batteries, you can talk about rate plans, like time of use if you're in Arizona. Like there's just so many different things that you can create or help the customer identify as an issue and point out that rock in their shoe, right? That now they're like, yeah, that has been bothering me a lot. Okay, so what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of where we're trying to get here. So now you present solar or batteries as the solution, especially in Arizona now. Like batteries is becoming such a key important part of that with demand charges and time of use and dropping buybacks. But we get into that solution. What's really important for customers to understand about that solution? Like when you present solar as a solution, how do you make sure that it makes sense to them so that it doesn't sound like this is too good to be true?
You got to set your expectations. You have to let them know that it's not going to be a perfect world to where people are saving a ton of money right off the bat, because if I was to tell you that, I'd just be like every other person trying to sell you solar,
right?
Trying to give you something that's obviously too good to be true. So when we, as a company that's looking to put you in a better financial stance for the future, we're going to make sure that your expectations are equal to what we're going to be able to provide.
How do you make it not sound too good to be true? Like when I say I'm going to give you a solar system and it's not going to cost you anything, like immediately the customer's like, okay, you're feeding me a line here, man. I don't believe you, right? How do you ensure that they understand like this is a legitimate offer?
I like to put a lot of emphasis on how the federal government and the state really is providing a lot of the upfront costs for people to do the project. And that just makes sense because they are. The whole climate change and all that stuff, they're throwing billions of dollars at this renewable stuff. You just got to make sure that they know that someone else is offering help for them, not just us. We're not just there saying, we're going to save you, right? Because, we're going to provide them a service. We're going to give them a better solution to get the same thing that they're already getting, but we're using other incentives as well. And at the end of the day, the cost that they're paying now is the same cost that we're going to give them. It's just redirected, and then they're put on a more predictable financial program to where they're not always getting the bill raised.
And you use that word predictable, right? When we talk about the solution to the problem, we want to use those kind of words that evoke safety for a customer. Because, right, the problem, when we identify the problem, we're trying to make them feel anxious and unsure and unsafe, right? Or recognize that that's the situation that they're in. Now that solution needs to solve that. We're trying to give them predictability. We're trying to give them sustainability. We're trying to give them savings and freedom. And those are the feelings that are going to make them feel a lot better. Now, when we talk about trying to make that product make sense for them, that it's not too good to be true, helping them understand, how does this make business sense? Why would you give me a solar system that doesn't cost anything? Well, number one, they need to understand that it is going to cost them, right? Like you mentioned, it's like, I'm not charging anything up front for this. Okay. The way that this works is we're going to put the panels up on your house at no upfront cost to you. We're going to put a battery wall on the side of your house at no cost to you. Okay. The first bill you get for all of this equipment is going to largely replace what you're already spending with the utility in the first place, but it's going to be at a reduced rate. And that's where you end up winning. So you win because you're going to end up having sustainability, security, and freedom and long-term savings, tax credits, and you go on and on with that. And then we win because now we have you as a customer, right? This is a win-win proposition here. And then customers are like, okay, this makes a little bit more sense. Now tell me about this. And then this is where they start asking questions. If they can understand there's no gimmick here, you're not trying to pull any wool over my eyes, now they want to start engaging. And this is where we can have a really solid back and forth dialogue to where now this appointment that we set is going to for sure stick, because now they're the ones that start asking the questions. But unless they understand the mechanism behind it and why this makes sense, they're not going to ask questions. And typically, if a customer is not asking questions, that appointment's not going to stick.
Facts.
Let me ask you this. What do you want a customer to understand when we start building value? What does it mean to build? What does it mean to build value in a product that we're trying to sell?
There's two ways to do it, especially in solar. One is discrediting or kind of highlighting the fact that the utility company has no interest in providing value to them. All they see them as is another customer that is forced to be with them, and they don't have any other options. So one way to build value on option B, which is renewable power, is to discredit option A, which is stick with the utility company, right? And then option B, the way to build value with the solar is obviously kind of give them an example of how they've chosen option B over option A with other things in their life that they've made financial decisions about, like their mortgage, their car, owning their home versus renting it, like owning their car versus leasing it or something like that. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's the key, right? It's showing options, because especially with utility, there's never been an option before. It's like, I have the utility and all of the associated pain points with it. Okay, cool. So here's where you're at on this side. Now let me show you what's on this side here. When you have your own system, you're providing your own power, instead of having these rates that go up by 5-10% per year, you're at a locked-in rate that never ever goes up. Yeah. Instead of having these restrictive demand charges that can kill you, guess what? Your battery's going to cover those demand charges for you. Instead of, having your grid go out and having to go without power, well, guess what? Now your solar and your battery backup allow you to have your own sustainable power source on your house, right? So we're going through and we're just showing them option A that you have right now is not as good as option B. Yeah. Just go back and forth. And now by the end of it, it's like, if there's more than one option, this other option's way better and it doesn't kill me from a cost perspective, why would I not be willing to listen to this? Yeah. Right? What are some of those main points that you drive? You mentioned a few of them. What are some of the main ones that you like to hit on the doors as you're trying to get people at least interested in hearing, setting up an appointment anyway? Yeah.
So I always like to ask them how much their average bill is, if they think it's $200-$300, and I like to illustrate it to them. Hey, you guys have been in the house for 10 years, right? Check out this graph. You've paid $200 a month for 10 years. That's 20 grand that you've donated to the utility company. If you were to move and ask them for any of that money back, what would your return on investment be? Then that totally opens their eyes to seeing the appointment. And then I'll be like, okay, so if we just take this same amount that you're giving to the utility company to fund this project where your new cost for power doesn't keep going up every year, and you're actually taking that money and putting it in a little piggy bank that adds value to your home and it becomes an asset, don't you think if we could make it make sense to you that option B would be a little bit more value to you and your family?
Bingo.
Yeah.
It's awesome. How do you know when it's time to transition, right? So we've built this problem. We've presented the solution. We've built value going back and forth. How do we know when it's time to transition and try to set that appointment? Because it's obviously it's a make or break, right? That's essentially the close of what we're trying to do here. How do we know when it's time?
So you have to do a good job at your pace and your cadence and building the pain points and the solution, and then qualifying them, which I always like to ask them before I ever ask them how much their bill is and stuff. I'm always asking questions like, hey, are you the one that looks at your bill statement every month? You guys you're the one that handles the bill. And then they'll be like, oh, I never handle that bill at all, right? My wife handles it, and I'll just be like, you just pay it, right? But if they're like, yeah, me and my wife both check it out, then I'm already finding out that they have a wife and they're both involved. So when I go to set the appointment, it's like, hey, dude, obviously you and your wife both look at the bill, so we need you both there to see it, this next option. Before I get a time to come back and show you, about on average, how much is your bill running per month? Because they already told me that they both check it out, right? So then I'm like, are you guys on budget billing, or do you guys pay up and down fees? And I'm just getting small little yeses. And then I'll be like, okay, so we're just going to have our engineers run the report. You wouldn't say no to us bringing that back to show you what it looks like, would you?
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
And
give them an easy way to say,
Yeah.
yeah.
What if you've only gone through and you're not getting a lot of engagement from them? They've kind of let you do your pitch. You've only talked to them for like 2 minutes, and they're just kind of stone faced.
Yeah.
Are you going to try to set that appointment, or what are you going to try to do? Because, right, anybody can go set an appointment. I think one of the hardest parts, especially for a new rep, is like, dude, I went out and I set 5 appointments and none of them sat, right? That's super frustrating. So we got to make sure that, like, that we're setting the appointments properly, and that'll be the next thing that we'll talk about. But like, if we try to set that appointment too early, it's all that is a customer trying to get rid of us. So how do you know that the customer's ready and interested enough to actually take that close?
Obviously, if they're not asking me questions, things like that, I know that they're not really engaged with it at all. So there are those people that are too nice to even say no.
Yeah.
But it's your job to, as a lead setter, if you haven't done this before, set everything that you can, and then if they're all canceling, then you need to go back and have someone who gets appointments that stick, kind of shadow you and see how you're doing it, or else you'll never know where you went wrong.
The biggest thing that you can do is, if they're not asking you questions, then you ask them more questions, right? And it's, what do you understand about what I've just said? What sounds cool about that? What sounds even bad about that, right?
Yeah.
What don't you like about that? Try to get them to respond. But if I can say, what questions do you have about the utility and its future? That's a weird question. I mean, I guess I kind of want to know where it's going. Okay. So if there's a solution that allows you to be more predictable with that, is that something that's worth looking into? Well, yeah, I guess, right? But we're just asking these kinds of questions that get them thinking and try to get them to ask a question back to us.
Yeah.
Then it's as soon as we've been able to have actual back and forth dialogue, it's like, okay, this customer's with me, and now we can try to move this thing forward. But if they're just sitting there stone cold, staring, it's like, this he's not ready.
Another thing that I would think, one biggest reason why people's appointments get canceled is because they're getting killed by the person that wasn't pitched at the door, whether that was the husband or wife.
Yeah.
So if you're not setting expectations up with say you're talking to the husband, and you're not like, hey, if you don't ask him this simple question, like, hey, what if your wife says no? Like, yeah, you're cool. You say you guys are both going to be here at 7. What if she says no? And then there's only 2 answers that the husband can give you. She won't say no, right? Mm-hmm. She's not going to say no. She'll if I tell her to do it, she'll be there. Or if she says no, we just won't do the appointment. Then I'll say, okay, what about the appointment? Is she going to say no to solar, or is she going to say no to that time? I'm fleshing out she'll probably say no to solar.
Yeah.
Right. So then I'm fleshing out his real objection. It's like,
I love that. Yeah. The other thing too is to ask them, say, okay, your wife or your husband wasn't here when we had this conversation. You kind of understand why this is worth listening to.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna have to sell your spouse on the same thing. Yeah. Can you just kind of repeat back to me what you understand about the issue that we're trying to solve and what our solution is, just so I can make sure that I've explained it clearly? It's a kind of an awkward, weird question. You're putting them on the spot. Yeah. But if I can get my customer to be like, well, yeah, I mean, obviously bills are going up and the utilities, having issues right now, and our bills are going to keep getting worse. And you're saying that the solar system with a battery is going to reduce a bunch of our costs. Like, I'm interested in hearing about it.
Yeah.
Okay. And one really quick thing, how much is this going to cost you up front? Oh yeah. And it doesn't cost me anything up front. Okay. Can you make sure can you say that to your spouse?
Yeah.
And now you got a mini salesman on your side that's going to be able to be a little bit more likely to get that person to actually sit with the appointment.
Yeah. It reminds me of this interaction that I had up north a couple months ago. I was pitching the wife on her doorstep. She was outside smoking, I think. And she's like, at the end of it, she was like, you just are such a good salesman that I just want to say yes to you. But I don't know, like, my husband has been totally against it in the past and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I just kind of like soft closed her on a possibility, because I know that setting appointments with people like that, there's a bigger chance of them canceling it. And I don't want to waste my time with that. It would be better to just follow up.
Sure.
And so it was just funny because the husband pulled up into the driveway, like, as I was about to walk out, and the wife was like kind of tripping. Like, I could tell she wanted to talk to him before he found out what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she kind of got up and was like, hey, honey, they want to come at like 6 to show us solar. And he's just, I was like, hello, sir. And he's just like, yeah, sure, that's fine. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was so weird. And it ended up being a 13 kilowatt sale.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's another thing to be said there too is, you know, if he hadn't pulled up in the driveway there, she's all excited about it.
Yeah. She
Like,
was selling him on it. Right
if
there.
I go back and I see him and he's pulled up in the driveway, like, and she's gone, and maybe it's like I'm doing my second lap around the neighborhood and I see him pull up,
Yeah.
I'm going to go talk to him as well and be like, hey, I don't know if you talked to your wife yet.
Yeah.
I stopped by earlier. Did she tell you that she had set up an appointment? I want to introduce myself and give you kind of a background on what we're talking about. And then I'm starting from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the exact same pitch with him. Now he's on board, she's on board. The sale's all but done at that point.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's, to get those appointments to stick is a lot of it is making sure that both spouses are on board.
Yeah, and if you set an appointment with a husband or wife at the door, and you're not asking them if their other spouse is available at that time to do the same thing like you just said, repitch them,
Yeah.
so that both of them are sitting there at the door saying yes, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
For sure. And if you know that the other spouse is home and they're in the background watching a game or
insist
cooking,
on getting them.
hey, can you grab them? I've got a question I want to ask
Yeah.
them, or I want them to hear this too because
Yeah.
they're going to want to know about this, right?
Exactly.
Like you got to get both spouses there.
I like to pitch one and get one kind of committed to seeing the appointment, and then I'll ask like, hey, is your husband here? I just want to make sure that's all right.
Yep.
Because then I already got the okay, and then they're kind of working for me because
Yep.
they already said okay.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect. So when we try to set that appointment, then what are some of the things that we want to do to make sure that that appointment is sticky?
So I obviously get all the information possible. Get the name, phone number, make sure both spouses are going to be there.
Okay,
Get
so we
the
got
bill.
contact
Yeah.
information is important.
Yeah, get the bill.
Getting the bill. Why is the bill important?
Because they're putting skin in the game. They're actually, if they will get you the bill, then you have like a way bigger chance of them actually seeing the value of you running a report because you have their exact usage, right? Whenever I don't get the bill, I'm like, okay, how am I going to run a report if I don't have the bill?
And it's an easy thing to ask for. So a lot of people want to know, obviously, is how much is this going to save me? How many solar panels do I need? How many batteries do I need? Well, I need to know how much energy you're using, so go grab that bill.
Yeah.
It's a very logical thing to get it. And if they're not willing to go get that, it's like, okay, cool. On a scale of 1 to 10, they're still only at a 5, and they'll probably set an appointment with me.
Yeah.
But the likelihood of that sitting is very, very low.
Yeah.
And so I need to get them to a 7 or an 8. I got to get that bill if possible, right?
Yep.
Sometimes it doesn't work, but it's like if I can get them to get a bill, then they just showed me how interested they actually are.
Yep. I also I'll take it as far as I can with everyone. I like to have them look at their main panel with me.
Get them off the door.
Yeah, just to
that's
make
great.
sure that the meter's updated. I can already know if they need an upgrade on their electrical service. And I always ask before I go, I always say on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 meaning your roof was just done last year, it's basically brand new, and 1 you needed 1 years ago, what would you rate your roof?
That's great.
Yep. That way when when I come back, because I self-gen now and stuff, or when my closer comes back, he knows, hey, they rated this roof a 4, a 3. So he's already knowing that he has to build the cost of the new roof in to that project.
Well, and then it just makes your pitch even more dynamic because it's like, okay, well, if it's a 4 or 3, or if it's a 2 or a 1, like how come you haven't done it yet?
Yeah,
because of cost.
Yep.
You don't have $20,000 to spend on a new roof. What if I could roll this all into the same loan for you?
Yeah.
And it's over a 20-year period.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds awesome, because the only thing that I heard of was like a 5-year loan, and the payment was too much. I've just been putting it off. And that's the other cool thing is, especially selling at Fusion, is you brought up roofs here, but it's like, dude, we can bring up this other stuff on the doors as well. Mm-hmm. If somebody answers the door and they're like, is this solar? No, I'm not here about solar.
Yeah.
Well, what's this about? Actually, I'm here about a different energy program, right? And then we start pitching AeroSeal or insulation, or we talk about a new rate plan and lead in with batteries.
Powerwall.
And then use solar as a backup to batteries, and battery be the primary pitch. But, you got all these other products that you can lead into to differentiate yourself, and then use the solar financing products that we have to be able to put these in a huge value bundle. Mm-hmm. And this is, I think this is a way that we can really make our door approaches very effective, is helping customers understand, like, this is different than what you've been pitched on before.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've we've set that appointment. We've set a specific time. We've got their contact information. Hopefully we've got that bill. Hopefully we've got them committed to have the spouse there, and we're on our way.
Last thing I think, which is huge, is the roof and the credit qualification question sets the stage for the appointment. So I always ask them the 1 to 10. It makes it easy for people to answer, because if it's not a 10, it's not a brand new roof. So then you want to find out. And then I always say, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 meaning you've never been late on a payment in your life, and 1, you just get your bills and throw them in the trash. What would you rate your credit?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Good.
Yeah, because they get a lot.
What do you mean? I toss them all.
Yeah, and if they say like, oh, I'm like a 7 or 8, then you go, okay, well, why isn't it a 10? Oh, I was late on a few bills, you know what I mean? But they're like, oh, I have a collection, I have a bankruptcy and all that. Then I'm like, okay, then we got some, when my closer comes or when I come, I'm going to run credit with them quick.
Yeah, you want to get that done early for sure. The last element of setting that appointment that I want to touch on is when we set that appointment, we've got to have that a same day appointment or next day appointment.
Oh, the urgency.
Right?
Yeah.
We have to have that appointment sit very, very soon to this conversation, because we've lit this fire, they're excited about it, they're understanding it, but time kills all deals, right?
Yeah.
If it's Monday and I set an appointment for Friday, likelihood of that sitting is 1 out of 10, right? It's
lower,
just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so if you can't get somebody buckled down that same day or the next day, you got to go back and reconfirm that appointment at some point during the week.
Yeah.
And say, hey, just I'm in the neighborhood. I just set up an appointment with Lizzie a couple doors down. I saw your car home, wanted to step in, make sure we're still good for Friday. Yeah, we're still good, right? That has to happen. Otherwise, it's just never going to sit. And I think that's another thing with new reps is they want to take whatever they can get, and they don't want to ruffle any feathers. So it's like, okay, we'll set that appointment. And it's like, when did you set it? Next Tuesday at 4.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let's kind of try to rework this. So we've talked a lot about the technicals. We've gone through the steps and all that kind of stuff. In order for any of this stuff to work, though, what's it important to understand about the mental side of door-to-door lead gen?
You're gonna have people who you thought for sure were interested in solar just say that they're not interested anymore. Yep. You're gonna get more no's every day than you get yeses. It's really a difficult job to go into if you don't have a little bit of money saved already, because people sense desperation.
Yeah.
And it takes a really experienced person and someone that's had a lot of success and know that they can operate from a place where they don't like. For me, I can go out, I could have zero money and I could go have the same week as if I have like a lot of money saved in the account. I just have done it so many times before that I just know that if I go out there, I know that the results come.
Yeah.
But when someone is like, oh, I'm late on my bills. They've never been in sales before. They don't know that they can set appointments. They don't know that the appointments are going to close. It's just such a mentally hard thing to do for most people.
You're just selling out of desperation.
Yeah.
Right? People smell it. They see it. They sense it. Yeah.
And you're basically like, all the thought energy that you put out every day is just going to translate into more lack.
Well, when I sit down and recruit people, that's one of the things I always bring up. Now, if you're going to come into this job, like number one, I want you to shadow somebody and watch them do it, because if you go out there and you're getting anxious just watching somebody else do it, bro, this is going to be tough for you, right? You need to watch them do it and be like, I love watching this and I want to try it.
Yeah.
You need to have that sense of urgency. And like you just said, you've got to have a month's worth of savings at least, right? Because this is going to take you probably a week to get your first appointment to sit.
Yeah.
And even if it sits, it may not close, but you've got to have some financial tolerance to be able to wait until you start getting those first checks coming in. But what's great is once they come in and you get your upfront pay and then you get your install pay, and then it becomes this pipeline.
Yeah.
You start making these amazing checks and you're doing really, really well. But as you start out, you've got to check that.
Just adding to that, when I first came back into solar, I was kind of rebuilding my life when I first came in, and within a month, just over a month, I was able to quit the job where I was working 35, 40 hours a week. But I never was like, this is the only thing. Even though I knew I would kill it in door-to-door, I'd already sold alarms. I'd already been one of the highest producing reps in Vivint in the summer office. Like, I knew I would do great, but I still with like just knowing that I had a paycheck coming in while doing it was beneficial for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Talk to me about routine and consistency when it comes to lead gen, especially door to door.
Yeah, so when I first got started with Fusion, I knocked Monday through Friday from about 3 to 7:30, 7 o'clock. And that was great. If you could commit at least a minimum of 2 hours on the doors, at least 1 hour of training before that, when you're first getting started, whether this is part-time or full-time, if you could commit to that, especially in the summer. When it gets cooler, should be able to commit at least 4 or 5 hours on the doors. But right now, 113.
It's pretty brutal.
It's pretty brutal, yeah. But if you could commit to an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours from 6 to 8 every day, it's just the compound effects of that will definitely pay off.
When I talk to new guys, I say, look, the magic number, like on a week, you've got to have about 20 hours of lead gen if you want to get a closed deal, right? Because we look at those ratios. It's like, all right, in 20 hours, I'm going to talk to about 4 to 5 people an hour, right? So that's going to be 80 people a week. Out of those 80, a quarter of them are going to give me 5 minutes of their time. They're going to let me actually go through my pitch. The other ones are going to shoo me off the door. Out of the 80 or out of the 20 that give me a shot, I'll probably set an appointment with, I don't know, 4 of them. If I set an appointment with 4 of them, maybe 2 are going to sit. And if 2 sit, I'm probably going to get 1 of those closed, right? But if I don't give that first input of time on the doors and do that consistently, I'll never get the output that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I see guys, it's like they'll come in on fire and they'll put in, 20 hours their first week. It was hard. They didn't get anything because they've never done it before. And then the next week they only put in 10 hours and like, yeah, this job isn't for me. No. You didn't do 20 hours again. You didn't even give yourself a chance based on standard ratios to get that close that you're looking for. And so it's like, you've got to be consistent. And that's the thing that I love about this job is in order to be consistent, you have to have a special mentality, a special grit that makes you get out there, even when it is so hot and you get the no's and you're not making money and it's just harder. And you're just like, I want to do anything but this, but you force yourself to keep doing it and you have that discipline. Every single time that somebody puts in those specific hours, it hits for them. And they end up being like you, right? They end up having success.
I just don't see why, if someone's going to go put in 20 hours in this, in knocking doors, how they can't put in 3 hours to train. You know what I mean? Because those 3 hours of training are going to make your 20 hours 10 times more productive.
And the fun part of it is that you're training on the job, right? It's when you're knocking with people, that's live training.
Yeah.
When you're talking to people and it's like, they come up with an objection that you don't know the response to. It's like perfect learning opportunity. I did not know how to handle that one. And you go off the door and it's like, okay, if I could replay that again, how would I respond to that differently? Okay, I'm going to try that the next time I get that one. And you try something new and it works. It's like, okay, that was a win. I just moved my chess piece a different way and now I can see how I can get further with people. But it is this game of progress that's a lot of fun.
Reminds me of Tyler had me pretty much run the training for the door knocking training on Tuesday this morning in the morning. And role play is more, I think role play is more beneficial than seeing someone do it live on the door because it's like putting you in the action yourself. And then they just all lined up at the end and one after another they threw an objection at me and I just like clockwork, like boom, 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 boom. And if everyone that came in just started doing that for 30 minutes a day, they would be 10 times better.
You're just ready to roll.
Yeah.
Like you said, you go back to your athlete analogy. It's like if you've put in that practice, once you get in the game, you see how somebody's positioned, you know exactly how to get by them.
Yeah. Someone calls a run. If you're a linebacker and you see a guard pull, you just like an objection, you know exactly where you're going.
Yep.
You don't got to think about it.
It's all about that training. It's all about that consistency. Well, this is awesome. I love this material, and I hope that the new guys, especially that are listening to this, and even people that have been going through this, you listen to these little things, and there's little things that we can always tweak. Everybody can get a little bit better. Maybe you're going in and you're pitching people, and you're trying to go straight to the solution before bringing up the problem, right? Or maybe you're not putting enough time trying to build value, or maybe you're setting your appointments too far out. Hopefully there's something that we've been talking about that everybody can take from the episode today. But you guys are learning from one of the best. Max has set hundreds and hundreds of appointments that have successfully closed over the last couple years. So appreciate your time and your wisdom, Max. Thanks for being with us today.
Appreciate it. Can't wait for the next one.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time on the Fusion Power Podcast.